Hello, and welcome to the premiere episode of Articulture. I am your host, Bray Bowers, and with me today is Grace. Grace, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm actually so excited to be on here because I was DJing earlier, and I actually wanted to be on here because your co-host wasn't able to be because she's sick right now. The flu is crazy. Be careful, guys.
Yeah,
be
be
safe.
careful, be careful.
But, I don't know much about art, but I'm excited to talk about it.
It's okay. That's what this is for. This Articulture to me, and how I'm going to explain it, this whole, first episode is just going to be kind of explaining, the name and, what it's about and what we're going to be doing. And, okay, so when I say Articulture, when I say, what did you think of when you first came to your mind?
I thought that you were pronouncing it wrong, or I thought I was just kind of stupid because I was like, articulture, that kind of sounds like article and mixed with, culture, or, is that, kind of like a play on
Well, I was thinking of agriculture.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
And then culture. Because here's my kind of explanation of it. So when I say someone is cultured, when we say someone is cultured, what does that mean to you?
To me, I feel like I have an understanding of cultures. I don't know. It's being cultured is kind of a weird.
It is It's a weird term, and that's kind of what I wanted this episode to be: the difference between cultures and cultured, and how we use it in language, because culture is people.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind, traditions and practices and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. So when I said culture is people and being cultured is knowing the people and places through the art that they create.
Ooh.
So basically, if you're, in my interpretation, if you're a cultured person, you know a lot about other places and other people because of the kind of art that you consume. You kind of get it from, there's other ways to be cultured, but in my definition, in my artistic definition, it's kind of having a wide range of interest and kind of knowledge of all different kinds of art and of different places where they come from.
Yeah, no, I like that definition. I feel like you put a lot of thought into it. I like it. It's very unique.
Yes.
It's not what I was expecting, but I like it.
Because I would, in the beginning of this, my first show that I had was called The Culture Corner.
Ooh.
And we would talk about pop culture.
Oh, okay.
But then I in my head, I'm like, okay, I don't want to get culture, the practices of people and their stuff like that. That's kind of different than the traditions and practices are kind of different than the art side of it.
Yeah.
And we're going to get a little more into what I mean by art, because that's such a broad term.
There's so many different forms of art. There's chalk. There's there's chalk art.
There is chalk art. Yes, there's chalk art.
There's painting. Yeah. There's graphic design.
Yeah.
That thing behind that poster thing behind you is
graphic
art.
Design.
Yeah,
yes.
Graphic design, stickers that you have on your computer. Literally everything is kind of art if you really think about
everything
it.
Everything is
Architecture could be art an art form.
We're going to get into that right now. So I have here the kind of aspects of art.
Yes.
So we have the visual, we have literary, we have performing art.
Ooh.
And those are the three. And that's it.
I like performing art. I think it's my favorite.
Performing art. So performing art would encompass dance, music, and theater. And also, I think is really interesting because I don't think a lot of people consider themselves engaging with art when they listen to music.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people do, but it's you don't think about it.
Isn't technically lyrics kind of literary
poetry.
Art?
Yeah, it's like poetry. Yeah.
I feel like they kind of have the same. They have stanzas and they rhyme and stuff. So
right.
I feel they tie together really easily.
Right. So the performing art is kind of the expression of the literary art when you kind of think about it, and the literary art, that next kind of tier of it. So we have our performing and then literary, and literary is novels, poetry, even myths and folklore, and comic books. Basically anything that's written down is pretty much literary art, except maybe a textbook.
Yeah,
a textbook is kind of different sometimes because it's informational and also mass produced and has what I found in some of my research when I was trying to like distinguish what is art and what isn't art, a lot of people who would talk about things that weren't art, they would be like, well, if it's associated with an industry, it's not art because it doesn't come from just you
within
making whatever and then putting it out there. It can become an industry, but it doesn't need an industry to survive on itself.
Okay.
Whereas like textbook writing is kind of an industry in itself.
You're right. Yeah.
You know, there's a market for it, and there's a need for it to be the way it is so that people get taught what they need to get taught. So it's not really considered an art, even though it's being written down in the language of like writing and stuff.
It's just more like informative.
Just more like, informational and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then we have like the biggest, most like when you think of like, when I say the word, and you're going to get so tired of us saying the word art.
I like the word art. It's like, you know when like you say something so much that it doesn't sound like a real word?
Right.
It's probably going to sound like that.
And like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind if I say art to you?
Honestly, drawing.
Exactly.
That's
like the visual.
Or like, you know, like the MS Paint, that like icon. It's like a paintbrush and like the easel. Like that's what comes in my mind first.
Yes. So under the category of the visual arts, we have architecture, sculpture, drawing, painting, photography, and I kind of want to get into this a little bit. Conceptual art.
Conceptual art?
Which you've heard of conceptual art. It was just in a different term, also known as modern art.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah, you got me. Now, I've always had a freaking problem with the term modern art because modern art isn't necessarily modern, nor is it like a lot of modern art. There's modern art from the 60s.
When I think of modern art, I think of like modern day, which I mean like right now.
Exactly. And I think of right now.
Yeah. That's what I think of
Yeah.
like when I first hear modern.
And then I also am like, well, then if it's modern, how can it be anything else if everything's modern, everything we're doing right now is art? That's why I really don't like that term. It kind of is like weird because it's like, is that all the art that's being created now is modern art, even though it's not? Because when we say modern art, we're talking about like the big paintings that you see in those like modern art museums that have like a circle on them or something, and it's like a yellow circle, and they're like, oh, this represents like
Oh, is it
whatever.
like the ones where it's just like lines and it like on a blank canvas, just like a line?
Yes.
Oh,
like
gosh.
Abstract kind of art.
Yeah.
That's why I like the term conceptual art a little bit better. I think it encapsulates that whole phenomenon way more effectively than modern art, because modern art can be anything that you make in the modern day to me.
Also, I feel like it just sounds more like better and more professional than modern.
Right.
Conceptual. Like
and
it just has a much better like way of saying it.
Right. It also sounds a little like, I feel like when some people say modern art, it's kind of with like a modern art, like you know that stuff that I could make if you gave me $50, I could make it, and then I'd sell it for $50 million, like something like that, even though you didn't.
Yeah.
But I like the term conceptual art because that's what it's trying to represent.
Yeah, it's like a concept.
Representational, yeah.
Yeah, no,
and
I like that much more.
Yeah, I do love that.
It just sounds so much more better. It sounds more like positive than modern just kind of sounds negative.
It sounds negative. It sounds like a little, okay, whatever.
Modern.
But I think some of the most influential, the reason that the first thing we think of when we say the word art being the visual medias is because they're probably some of the most recognizable and the most renowned, like the freaking Statue of Liberty or the Paris, the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, I also feel like visual art has been around like much longer.
Oh yeah, because that's like the first. Cave paintings. Even we go back again to the dang cave painting times.
Yeah.
They were making representational figures of all the things that they saw. They were even making up like, imaginary figures, which is crazy to have that be kind of a almost part of humanity itself, which I think is very interesting. So we've had art almost as long as we've had being human.
Yeah. I think that's great though. I
Isn't
love
that crazy?
like being connected to art, because I feel like art is such like a personal and like deep like subject. Just me personally.
Right. And I love that it can also impact so many people.
Yes.
And also you can learn so much about a lot of different people in a lot of different places just by like
The art they create.
the art that they've created.
I feel like it like tells a lot about someone.
Mm-hmm.
And like I feel like art is so important because like it also gives like a person to like vent their feelings, like vent art, but also like poetry. You could say like things that you can't really say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a great way to express yourself.
Right. And that's kind of all of this that we're talking about is kind of all under the Articulture brand. Like, so what my idea for this show is going to be is, you know, with my co-host, whoever it may be, it might be Natalie next time, but we will have you on whenever we want, Grace, because you're lovely.
I love it here.
To talk about our favorite aspects of all. We'll go into individually all of these different things. Hopefully we'll talk about architecture, we could talk about sculpture, drawing, painting, photography, novels, poetry, all these things. I would love to deep dive with a lot of different people about them. I'd also like to interview a lot of people who have experience in those specific fields, especially here at ASU.
That would be
and
so
see like what it
interesting.
means to them and everything like that. Because I want to get to like I'm a person who just likes everything. I want to consume all the arts. I want it all. I think it's all so cool.
Gimme.
I appreciate it all. There's no area of artistic expression that I'm not a fan of.
Yes.
Because I think
agree.
it's so personal and everyone has their own like interpretation of it. And it's just fun. It's fun and interesting to see what people create with their own imaginations because human beings are freaking talented.
I like that like everyone's different. Like no one can create like the same image. Like they're like everyone's art styles are different. Like how like I'm horrible at drawing people. Like I literally can't even draw. Well, I can draw a stick figure. I can do that pretty good.
Okay, there you go.
But like I can draw a face sometimes on good days. I'm more better at like drawing animals, but there are people like my sibling like they're better at drawing people rather than animals. Like so I like how everyone is just like they're just good at something like that, like in different aspects of art. And like some people can't even draw, but they're really good at dancing or singing.
Exactly.
I think that's really, really unique.
Exactly.
Like me personally, I suck at singing. I'm horrible at it. I tried singing because I really wanted to get into singing because I was like in choir. So I was like, I want to see how I sound. I recorded myself and I wanted to cry. I deleted it immediately.
Aww.
I covered a song. I think it was like by a BTS member, but it was like sung in English, and so I covered that, and I listened to myself like the recording.
Right.
It sounded so bad. I was so bad, and then like I'm doing the upcoming K-pop concert in the spring. I already have like a team and everything. We've been learning dances, and again I recorded myself, and I looked so stiff. It was. But, like, you know, it's something I enjoy, so like, I'm going to continue doing it.
Exactly. And that's another thing I did want to... You bring up a great point. You're so freaking smart, man.
Dang.
Because you knew what I was going to say next.
Oh, you.
So, one of the things that makes art and the expression of it so enjoyable is when you make it because you want to make it.
Yes.
Making art for no reason other than to make art is the most pure way to enjoy the art form, I think.
Yeah.
Because once you start putting pressure behind it and you start putting like a financial aspect behind it, it gets to a place where you're making it for something.
Yeah.
And not just purely out of your own enjoyment and joy of it, which I think is where the most pure expressions happen. And I really like when you find a painter or you find a photographer or someone who just you can tell they just love doing it. And they just have it in their soul and they couldn't do anything else but do that. And that's just amazing. Because
like you can really tell when like an artist loves something.
Yeah.
Like it will show in their works. I took a bunch of art classes in high school. And some people only took the class because they thought it was easy. Art is not easy.
It's not. Well, it's as easy as you
make it.
Yeah. I mean, it's as easy as hard as you make it. It really is. It really is. And I kind of, that's another thing in classes in high school. Another reason why we all think immediately, we think of the word art and we think of painting and drawing.
Yeah.
And because when you have art class, you're doing the visual mediums.
Yeah.
And I think that is just, we all acknowledge that all these other things are art, but to, like, talk about them in the same, like, way and the same channel of expression, I think that's kind of what I want to bring to this show, is, like, all of these things are vastly different in all. They could be movement, they could be writing, they could be vocal, they could be physical, they could be building something, they could be any of these things, but they're all combined together under art.
Yes.
And they're all expressions of your culture, or they're a reaction to what's around you, or they are impacted by the environment that was around you when you created it, no matter what form it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting. And that's just basically what this is all about. This is just about all dissecting, talking about all the things that we like about it. And I just think it's really, really fun.
That is very, very interesting. I'm excited for what this show is going to bring.
Me too.
Because I feel like we need more people to, like, talk about art. Not a lot of people are really, like, invested or, like, interested in art because they just find it as, like, an easy subject. But I feel like people, like, most people don't know that architecture is art.
Exactly.
Or like, poetry is also art.
Right.
Like, it's, I feel like people think of poetry as more of, like, a theater aspect.
And theater is also art.
Theater
I
is
mean, it's
also
all
art.
because you have, like, people
Performing
building sets,
arts.
performing these, writing these scripts and everything like that. It's so interesting, and I love it. And one of the things I did want to touch on, because it's kind of a controversial, during my research for this kind of, baseline episode that we're doing, just talking about art and talking about what it is and what we consider it to be, just kind of laying out the ground rules, I guess. Cinema,
like movies and stuff?
Movies. Would you consider movies art?
I think I would.
You think you would?
Yeah, I think I would. I think
Why
it
would you
would
consider
classify as, like, visual arts because
Okay.
it's like a storyline, like a plot. Like, I feel like it's just more of, like, something that comes within. Like, people don't just make stuff because, like, they think of, like, the personal, like, the viewer's eye or, like, the viewer's opinions of it. But they also think of, like, hey, I'm passionate about this. I want to make a storyline of it. And so I would consider that art because if you, like, create a painting, you're being like, oh, like, I'm passionate about this thing. So I feel like it, like, ties in hand with, like, cinema and movies and shows like that.
A really interesting thing that I found is that originally when, in the, like, early days of film, silent film, kind of when we're just starting to get, like, picture and
like the black and white
and everything like that, a lot of academics did not consider cinema an art because it was so inaccessible. It was considered an industry, an artistic industry, but an industry before it was an art, which is very interesting.
That is interesting because, like, it also, I feel like cinema and, like, theater also kind of tied together because they're acting.
Right.
You know?
It's almost like an evolution.
Yeah.
But because there was so much money needed to make movies back then, it was like you couldn't just make whatever you wanted because you had to have an audience. You had to have people pay for all the stuff that you had, your sets, your cameras, all this stuff. So it was kind of pigeonholed into, oh, okay, this is like, you'll tell a retelling of, like, an old book or something, and it'll be fine. Like, and people will go watch it, and it's whatever. But
nowadays,
that all changed.
Okay, good.
That
I was gonna
all
say.
changed in the 60s.
Ooh, so kind of recently. That's crazy.
Because, again, let's kind of put ourselves back into that kind of era. When we're talking about old Hollywood, we're talking about, big, bombastic kind of musical numbers, all of these things, MGM, they sign their actors on. It's a whole thing. It's a whole rigmarole of, like, all of this, like, complex industry things and everything like that. So it was very hard. It's hard for us to imagine that because we have cameras with us at all times. We have them in our phones and everything. Anyone can make a movie nowadays,
Honestly.
as long as you know how to edit or have talent whatsoever. You can make anything and call it a movie.
Who knows if it's going to be good, but
who knows
you
it's
can
going to
make
be
it.
good, but you
anyone
can
make a movie. I've seen some horrible movies that have done great.
Me too.
Like Wish. Do you like Wish?
No, I don't like
Okay,
Wish.
yeah. I feel like Wish was a bad movie.
Wish was horrible.
It was created.
No.
So, yeah, anyone create a movie.
Right. so back then, no one had cameras. I mean, they had cameras, but movie cameras specifically, and the physics needed to make such a picture was just not accessible.
Yeah.
So not anyone could make it. Whereas when you think of like drawing, architecture, even poetry, anyone can start doing it.
Yeah.
You know, from something. You can mold a piece of clay, you can write a stanza, you can write a poem, you can paint a picture without, you know, too much financial burden upon you.
Okay.
But a movie is its whole, I mean, it's a big, giant undertaking, really.
That makes more sense.
It
why
changed
would
in
be
the
different.
60s from the onset of kind of consumer-grade cameras and also from the French New Wave, which was a film kind of revolution that happened in France, in Paris, actually. And it was an era of experimentation where the vision of the auteur was created. Do you know what an auteur is?
No, I do
An
not.
auteur is kind of... So when you think of the writer, director, producer... You know, the whole, like, it was all this one person's vision and they made this movie, that is an auteur. So, like, your Martin Scorsese's, your Francis Ford Coppola's, your Stanley Kubrick's, all of those are kind of modern-day auteurs. And those came from the likes of Jean-Luc Godard, Agnes Varda, and Eric Rohmer. They were kind of the great kind of first people who really made, like, the kind of naturalistic solo style filmmaking where they were just kind of filming, like they had friends that they thought were interesting and they would just film them and they'd be like, you read this thing that I did. And a lot of the directors were starring in their movies as well. And it was very independent and all things, and it became so popular that other places saw it and was like, oh, we can like make movies. So from that point on, cinema became like the seventh art.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. That's interesting how like
very interesting.
one person can like change like the whole idea of it. That's crazy.
Right. The experimentation that was needed kind of birthed the way for cinema to be as artistic as it is now. And I totally consider it an art. And we're definitely going to be talking about it a lot more on this podcast because it's one of my very favorite things.
I like it. It's very interesting how like someone... I just think like the human brain is so interesting. Like we can create so many things. Like just because we're existing, we feel like so strongly about a certain thing.
Right.
Like we can literally create that through like art. And that's great. Because like I love art as like a subject.
It's so fun.
Like as a whole. It's
so fun.
It's so interesting.
It's
like it like amazes me like what people can create.
It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Like someone built the Statue of Liberty. Someone
painted the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, like that's like you mean like someone like just someone?
Just a guy.
That's crazy.
Just a guy. A guy up there. He was painting. He just painted it, and it looks like a picture.
Great.
It's crazy.
Like that takes like crazy like maybe not even like talent, like just so much passion.
Right.
Like I find that crazy.
And I kind of want to. Our last thought I will put here is that to me, art is one of the most human things you can do.
Yes.
It's one of the most human things, and it's also one of the most extraordinarily human things you can do because you think of the things that you're astounded by, you know, architecture, giant buildings, these giant crazy paintings. People made that before there was like the internet. Yeah. You know? And it's just wild. And it's just
insane.
And revisiting it and talking about how much we love it and deep diving on it and talking with other people who participate in different medias of art really is just a celebration of being human, I think. And I think it reminds us all the things that we can do and that we're kind of crazy creatures. When we put our minds to something, we can kind of do anything. And I think that's so inspiring, and I know that's kind of like preachy a little bit, but
no, I think it's great. Like you're really so true.
Cool.
Like that's so right.
It's really freaking cool, guys.
It is
like
cool.
If you're not even artistic, I feel like you should watch this because I feel like you can be like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. Like before I went and like researched a lot of stuff, I'd be like, oh, that's a cool painting. But then you're like, oh, that was in the 1800s and it's as big as a freaking room.
Yeah.
And it's a masterpiece. And like, how did they do that? Like,
literally,
it's crazy.
it is.
And we'll get in
so...
to a lot of that stuff. But that's going to be close to the end of our time. So I would like to thank you, Grace,
of course,
for stepping in and being just a really great little guest host and having a lot of cool things to say.
You.
Is there anything you would like to leave us off with?
I do have one question.
Okay.
Would you consider like fiction, like a fiction book, art?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, because I thought so.
Yeah, of course. Any literature, I think, is art. I mean, if it comes from your mind to the page, that's pretty much that says the final word right there. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Like
that's great.
And we'll also get into books because, girl, I've got books.
I honestly, love a book. I love writing because I feel like writing could also be like a form of expression.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And like, there are like some books that I read and I'm like, this is insane. Like someone...
You're like, oh, they ate that.
Like literally like okay, diva. Like like, they created such like an amazing artwork just from words.
Whenever you read words together and you're like...
Oh, yeah. No,
like,
it's great. Like it's insane like how like some words on a paper can make me cry.
Exactly.
Like that takes like incredible passion.
Yeah.
Like that's just so insane to me how someone can like create something so beautifully and like other people can like it too.
Right.
It's just so crazy.
And again, it just really it really puts a point in that like someone just wrote that.
Literally.
And it makes you feel so much and
Literally.
it can inspire people and it can be like, I mean, literally the country that we live on, the Constitution was just written.
Yeah.
And we're like, yep, that's going to govern us. That's the power of like literature and like of that could be art, you know. I don't think I'd consider the Constitution art, but the principles of it.
I feel like that's more like informative.
It's more informative, but the principles of writing and everything and kind of expression are very powerful. And I think sometimes we kind of forget about how powerful it is.
Yeah.
And how powerful it can make us feel too.
I love how literature, like books specifically, they also have like the literature aspect, but they also have like the graphic design aspect because of the book cover.
Multiple little parts. It's just amazing.
It's good, but like I love art so much, but I feel like I don't want to sound like a grandma when I say this or like an old person or nothing. Not that there's anything wrong with grandmas or anything, but like AI, I hate it because I feel like have you seen AI art?
Yes, that'll be a whole episode. We'll have a whole episode about AI art.
It's so bad.
It's so bad.
Because like...
Well, because it doesn't make anything. It just pulls from pre-existing things.
And there's no passion in it. Like we were talking earlier how I can like see the passion. There's no passion in it. It's just there. Like in my art class, like I could tell the people who weren't passionate about it. Like it just looks so bland. But like if you're passionate about it, you'll be like, oh, I have this great idea in my mind, and like like mostly exactly how to put it onto like words or like a paper. And I just think that's so fascinating because like the human brain is so unique.
It is.
And it's so crazy that we can like I've been like saying like it's crazy, it's so cool,
but it is.
It really is. It's so like extraordinary that we can create something so beautiful just because we thought of it.
Right.
Like that's insane.
And I think we'll leave it at that
okay.
because that's kind of the long and short of it.
It's
incredible what we can create, and I hope that through this show I can learn from a lot of other people, and I can get to talk with people about art, and I can share my favorites, and they can share our favorites, and maybe you'll discover something new that you didn't know about, and you'll become a fan of whatever we talk about, and that's my goal. I just want to spread curiosity and just wonder, because I love to wonder, and I love to awe, and I love to just bask in the glory of human creations. And I think we should all
it's very human.
Try to do it a little more often.
I agree. I feel like more people should start going to like art museums and stuff because they're fascinating.
Right.
It's so insane like what people can create.
It's insane. So with that being said, I think that'll wrap up our first episode of Articulture. Thank you for joining us today, Grace.
Yes.
Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you. I hope I will be returning soon.
We hope you will be returning too.
Thank you.
All right. that's going to be it for us today. This is Bray and Grace
Yes.
signing off. Bye.
Bye.